Yeah, I know. There wasn't an upload on Friday. I got carried away to live streaming and whatnot, and yeah, I know. But that being said, welcome back to part 5 of Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, where today, after our little run-in with Scarlet, we've ended up, well, for where we wanted to be, but having to go the long way around in the underground of the Shinra HQ. So now we need to take this underground path to the very end in the hopes of eventually stumbling into this ultimate materia that they've been working on. There's a lot of boxes in this room. If you're playing on hard mode, I'd be half tempted to say wait until after the fights you're going to do in here. I say that hard mode isn't as generous with what the boxes give you when you break them. And at this point, I'm more just breaking them to pass the time, because you are standing around in here for a good few seconds waiting for Scarlet to start talking again. And she's going to make her suggestion and her grand plan of how she's going to do everything. She's the combat or weapons expert, so of course she's going to test all of her weapons and machinery on us. Since we shouldn't be here anyway, and it was painfully obvious from the start that we shouldn't be here. So at least when it first starts off, like this chapter, I'll say it straight up now, like especially if you're going into it in hard mode and like you haven't actually done the normal playthrough yet to know what kind of journey you're going to be going through. Chapter 2 has more fights than Chapter 1, which I suppose makes sense because it's later on, but it's also far more linear. You rarely break away for anything. It's very much just a long string of fights, and almost everything you're going to be fighting are going to be Shinra tech or Shinra guards, or just basically things you fought throughout most of the main game. Like there's not really many or really any new enemies throughout here. There's a couple, but they'll pop up later on. But as a general rule, expect everything you fight to be things you'll recognize from the main journey. Which, to be fair, gives you a step advantage, because it means that you already know how to deal with them, because you dealt with them in the main game. It's just now you're dealing with them with only a party of 2, and you can only control one of them. But at the same time, it's also one member of that party that you can control who's got the best gameplay systems in the game, full stop, right now. So there is a balancing act there. You're far more capable with Yuffie than you ever was with Cloud, Tifa, Barret, or Aerith. But at the same time, you are a member down, so you've got to try and fill up the gap as much as you can yourself. But you can already kind of see exactly what I mean. We've literally just done a fight, they talk for a few seconds. Another fight, they talk for a couple seconds. Another fight. It's extremely, and I said I know it's fitting because of the whole Scarlet being like the weapons division expert and whatnot, but it is very much, you're gonna be spending most of this chapter just fighting things. Like I say that I don't want to be too critical on it, but it is kind of a letdown. Like the bosses that we'll be fighting are interesting and different, and the fact that we're underground in the first place, it's a new environment with new things and whatnot. But it just feels slightly underutilized, and it kind of just reminds me of Chapter 7 of the main game again, where that just turned into corridor simulator with enemies at every turn. And I think this is what I kind of mean, where it's like they're still getting there, but it does feel like an effort to improve on the formula started here. Because in the main game, most of the main game is kind of corridor simulator, even when you're side questing. Whilst in this, the whole of the first chapter was a lot more open-ended, and especially that later bit where we was doing all the runaround and everything in part 3, there was a lot more interactivity in the environment than we ever had in the main game, making it far more fun and far more engaging outside of combat. Whilst you come to this chapter, and although there's the odd little moment, it kind of falls back to like its safety net for a lot of it. So we get a lot more of just, oh, these characters keep pushing forward and keep on finding things to fight, and not so much navigating and parkouring the world. There's a bit, but not enough.
Madam Director, the intruders are about to reach the research facility.
And we'll let them. Meanwhile, find out what it is they want. You do have eyes, don't you? Then you can see that while they are simpletons, they've made it further than any normal Wutaian ever could. Clearly they are ninjas. Teenage ninjas. And they've come such a long way. We simply must roll out the red carpet. My trusty steed should provide a fitting welcome, I think. Keep me apprised, would you?
Ma'am, cut system power to the research facility. Bar access to confidential data, then retrace their steps. Find out why they're here. Above all, do not let them out of your sight. Sir!
It kind of reminds me, the little scenes we're going to get here and there of Scarlet watching what we're up to and plotting as we go. It reminds me of Heidegger in like chapter, what was it, 5? Where it's like when we're going through the tunnels and every now and then it cuts to Heidegger going, let's put this here. And then he mistreats some of his guards and calls it a day. It's kind of the same deal, just replace Heidegger as Scarlet and like the rest kind of fits into the same shoe, you know? These shock troopers will be slightly more annoying to deal with if you hadn't got used to finding other methods during the main game and just almost entirely relied on Cloud countering them to death. Because now you've actually got to deal with them. But this is kind of what I mean. This is the synergy and Yuffie's expanded toolkit just rinsing them. The tools you have at your disposal more than make up for not having some of the things that you had in the main game. Like, you know, a third party member or a natural parry skill to deal with the shock troops. It's going to be disappointing if they pull Yuffie back to Cloud and Tifa's level instead of bringing everyone up to Yuffie's level in part 2. Like, I genuinely feel everyone should have this level of options. It shouldn't just be Yuffie. Because if it is, and they keep everyone else the same, I'm gonna only want to play as Yuffie, you know? Or like the new characters, because I imagine Sid and Vincent and even Kaiichi will probably have a lot under the surface. Oh, and Red will probably be playable as well, so I'll add Red there as in it as we go. But you know, there's going to be a lot more, and they're going to constantly add new things and touch up old. So why not give these like first run characters from the actual main adventure that upgrade, you know? The game's going to go out of its way to highlight this materia behind you when you activate the puzzle. That's because it gives you a one-of-a-kind exclusive to this one, and I'm never going to use it. It gives you Ninja Cannonball, which is basically when you've got it equipped, it will give you more new attacks that tie to the synergy. So when you use certain synergy attacks, it will now have like an extra attack on the end of it. They'll do an extra thing with it if you press R1 and triangle whilst flying through the air through synergy. I never use it. I never find enough value to give up something else for it, so I don't bother. But there are other materia here, like, you know, a second steadfast block, so now both of you can have one. So that's if I recall, it's it'll take less damage from guarding, but it's also you get an ATB boost while you're guarding, which for Sonon, you know, the character you don't control, so can't rack up his ATB super quick, anything that artificially boosts it for him, you're gonna want to use so you can help still like control him a bit better and influence what you want him to do a little better. To give you an idea of how much is actually left, however, of this project, this is the penultimate part of Intergrade. There will be this video, the next one, and then all that is left is the one bonus video, which I still yet to even begin recording, because my whole spare time when I'm not doing recording and editing, as you well know, was live streaming, because I was having a goddamn blast going through Danganronpa. And if you haven't watched it and either plan to, or you're not sure yet, or you think, oh, maybe I'll get round to it, don't worry, I'm not about to spoil anything. Or you know, start going into detail about X, Y, and Z, what characters I like, dislike, whatever. It's all in that video. It's all in that live stream. The only things I missed, not that I didn't talk about, I eventually wrote up in the comment of the last live stream, because I realized that when I reached the end, I never like ordered my case, like what cases I thought was the best to worst. And so I did that in the comments and then just gave like a couple other little nitpicks to a couple of things and a couple other little things I liked that didn't mention before like sending that comment out. So then there's still some kind of clarification, but I talk about a lot anyway. This is kind of an interesting thing, and it's only really they only really give it to you, and it's only really here because they know there's only 2 chapters to this DLC, and some materia you're gonna want to try and max out before the end. the idea of it is it's only got one slot, but it triples growth. So you can't link it with AP up. If it was double slot, can you imagine if it was double linked slot and triple growth? You could put on the ATB and it'd be ×6 growth because that doubles whatever it's on. Jeez, that would be insane. But yeah, no, unfortunately you can't do that as we get beat up a little here. And I get to show you the real merit of the wind attack when you use it after your weapon's thrown out. It's so broken. I don't know why they jacked up its damage so much, and I'm really expecting it to get nerfed come part 2. As much as I really hope it doesn't, I can imagine it will. The amount of damage it does for no good reason, that makes no sense. Genuinely, you're going to see it more in the next video than this one, but when we get there, it feels like it ends bosses on its own. Like, it feels like it becomes a straight up replacement to the limit break after a while, because it's like, well, if you just got 2 ATB, throw your weapon out, use it twice, oh look, like a third of the whole, you know, major boss's health's vanished. It shouldn't be like that. But as for the Danganronpa live streams, I mentioned in that as well, and if you're someone that's not interested in the live streams, I hate to break it to you, but I love doing it, so I want to do more, and that's just kind of the bottom line. Everything I do on this channel, I do because I enjoy it. So if I'm enjoying something a lot, I'm going to want to do it more, and I had a goddamn blast live streaming Danganronpa. I had an insane amount of fun live streaming Danganronpa, and so, of course, I'm going to cover the sequels, equally going into them blind, because I think that was what part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, is I had no idea what was coming around the corner at any given point. And it's only when I finished it, I kind of like took to chat and whatnot. I was kind of like, oh, so this is a thing, this is a thing, I could have done this, yada yada, but it was all a part of only that game, you know? It's alright once you're done, because you're done, but it was just during it. Thankfully nothing was spoiled for me, and I just got to carry on and kind of bounce off whoever was watching and just have a really good time, you know. So of course I'm doing that again for 2 and 3, and when they will be, though, when those live streams start, won't be until after this is done. So if you've only been interested in this and been a little bit grumbled by the fact that I haven't been doing these videos as often, or when I do they're not as long, don't stress. This part and the next part will drop before I start live streaming again. Well, at least they should. Before I put myself in a corner, people say, but you said if they're all edited together, done and uploaded, I just need to swap them from private to public, and I really get the itch, then I'll do it and just explain that thing. It's like, yeah, they're good to go, I just really wanted to play it. But as it stands right now, I'm going for 100% completion in the first game, which is extremely grindy, but it won't happen instantly. So the whole time I'm doing that, I'm not going to jump into the second one, because I feel like if I jump into the second one, it will make it harder to justify going back to the grindy part of the first game instead of going back to the fun stuff. Because even if the second game's not as good, the idea of, oh, go back to the other one to do the grindy shit, it's harder to convince yourself when you're going back a game. Whilst if you're still on it, it's easier to kind of say, okay, now let's just keep on going, let's get a move on. I didn't talk about it because we kind of come and went so quickly, but there was a new enemy back there, one of the very few instances of a new enemy in this DLC, and it's really not that tough. Like, it feels like it's specially designed for Yuffie and Sonon to take on, which I think helps. Like, all the new enemies had to be made with these characters in mind, and so I feel like they work out in that sense of how you fight them and how you deal with them, as a motorbike works its way past our window. That's going to end up becoming a joke, and I don't mean it to be. It's just every single time I hear a motorbike, because of Danganronpa, I immediately think of the motorcyclist from that game, Mondo. And throughout the whole live stream I went, oh, there's a Mondo passing us by, and I feel like it's just going to end up getting stuck in me, that I'm always going to end up saying that every time I hear a motorbike pass my window. Because I'm not even on a main road. I think that's why I point it out every time it happens. My road really isn't a main road, it's just motorbikes end up passing by all the time. Shifting topics to what we're actually playing again, though, before I completely lose the plot. This is one of the only real breakaways that you get during Chapter 2. This Whack-a-Box minigame. There's 2 courses that you'll get. An easier one that you'll get in 1 or 2 tries, and a harder one that you'll be at for a while until you realize it's hyper precise to get the best score. Unlike the one Cloud did in the main game, this version of Whack and Box, when you do the hard course, requires you to break every single box. But there's some new unique rules to it that only apply to Yuffie's one. Orange boxes will break easier with physical attacks, purple will break easier with ranged attacks, as in like throwing and then using magic. Bring Deadly Dodge, just like in the main one. Deadly Dodge is your best friend, but you gotta throw out the weapon, then start using magic to try and break everything. When it gets to these 1500 boxes, the game will try and encourage you to use things like Arts of War like I'm doing here, but if you want to break it easily, you know how I keep on talking about how powerful Windstorm is? Fucking throw Windstorm. Do a thrown version of Windstorm. Throw it out and then use Windstorm and watch the box just break. 9 times out of 10, because of the weird damage scaling on it, watch it just break. But this first course, as I've mentioned before, really isn't that bad. You'll get the best prize of it in only a couple tries. But you see, like, keep that in mind for later. I used Windstorm with it in hand, and then watch later on when I start using it where I just throw it and use it. And it's on 1500 prize boxes that I haven't touched once. And watch how quickly they break then. That point there, that was actually me going to try it, but for some annoying reason, it came straight back to Yuffie with 0 warning. So she just did it in front of her instead of where it was. There is a trick though that you can get to move around a lot quicker. You just saw it there. As I mentioned before, Yuffie will always go to the shuriken, not the other way around. So you can use that to whip yourself across the room if you need to get some of these boxes. There are time booster boxes as well around that you might have just seen, and they will become your lifeline trying to break every single one of them, because it's a different course as well. Even though it's the same area, the box layout is different in the hard mode course. God, look at all the hits done. That's what it is. It's not lag, that's hits done. That's the game deliberately pausing because you hit something. Oh, a full banishment will always break the 1500s as well, which is what they expect you to use for a lot of this, but no, I really don't. As I narrowly extend my time just to break a couple more boxes to get to 25,000. So I think that I was overextending. I think you only need 15,000 to get the highest, but just to be on the safe side, I pushed for 25. Because that's exactly half of what you need for the hard mode course. Oh, it's 20,000, so I've done it anyway. And now you unlock the soldier training, the much harder course. And you're going to see a slight cut here, because it took me 2 attempts. The first attempt, I was narrowly short, because I remembered what I did that I recorded and threw on YouTube before I even did the Let's Play. So I just did it again. But just kind of optimized a few things. Now I have better knowledge of how powerful some skills are. So just pay attention as we go through. Anytime you see me throw it and then use the wind form, watch what happens to anything in the vicinity. So I wasn't even expecting to get it. Like I had a rough start at the beginning of this, so I was like, nah, it's not gonna happen, I'm not gonna get it. And I managed to get it on this attempt. I had a much better start on my first attempt, it just fell apart later. Look there, I think that was it, because Yuffie was too busy targeting this one. Windstorm broke both of them, because I threw it out first. And if you're sitting there and going, oh, but you did a couple strikes on it beforehand, so that makes sense. No. It would have only registered on one of them, and it broke both of them without a care in the world. Every time you see me throw it and then use it, boxes break. It's only these physical ones that I usually don't bother, because the physical 100s die so easily. So throw it, use it, broke both of them. Didn't have to waste any time. It's always your MO with this, is that you should be throwing, then wind. And then when you haven't got the ATB to use it, just use good old dodge strike. But it's the same again here. I back off, I throw it, I use it, they both break. Because of the power damage scaling on the thrown version of the wind attack is absolutely bonkers. Like, it's genuinely like my favorite part of Yuffie's moveset, that she just has a kill button basically. But it's something that you might not realize is there straight away, and it can do the whole game. Not knowing is a thing that Yuffie can just do, that she just has a kill button. And like I said, it's amazing for bosses later on. I haven't actually started the hard mode yet, but if it doesn't get scaled down in hard mode because of the nature of hard mode, I will be using that to like rinse the final bosses in chapter 2 because it does get kind of tough. Throw it. I was saying, these are only the small boxes. It's not worth wasting an ATB on these. Try not to, like, if you're getting worried on time, try to just push to break them all or find it a quicker route. Because if you're getting too time conscious to such an extent, you're like, no, I need to go to the next room. You will be wasting time running back to get them when you're trying to get max score. So here I only use, this is the only reason I use Banishment because it has the range to reach all of them. And because of how many times I've done the Wind Strike, it will break all of them. And now it's just making sure the rest break. Because they annoyingly have that, yeah, there we go. They have that box be that far. That was an unfortunate waste of a windstorm because I didn't realize that that thing did get caught on the edge of the last windstorm, so it just, you know, narrowly survived. But now it's practically everything. It's just this one, which I was slightly concerned wouldn't break in time, but thankfully there it went. So there we go, 50,000 in under the time limit. The absolute maximum score. A lot tighter than the ones we did with Cloud. So it kind of, like, the ones with Cloud are way easier. And I get that they wanted to make it harder for the DLC when they brought it back. But my goodness, does that take the life out of you trying to figure out. Your reward for doing the hard mode is things like the experience up and the gil up and, like, the more generalized things. Which I don't equip straight away, but equip eventually for, like, the end of Chapter 2. But you honestly don't need it. You really don't. I hover around it and toy with the idea, but I eventually just steer clear because it's like, nah, when I in my own time do hard mode, I'll worry about it then. As we proceed to carry on, it's always worth taking the left path up first instead of the right, because I always forget which one of these end up leading to loot. It's actually the second one, but when you're playing, you're not going to know that. But if you just take the left path first, you'll always be on the side of treasure first whenever it arrives. Whilst if you take the right path first, you'll be on the correct path 3 times out of 3, you know? So just in, like, on natural impulse, taking the left route every time, you're not at risk of missing, you know, the time material we just picked up there. So now we can use haste slow and eventually stop. But this is kind of like the only, oh yeah, right, they're ninjas bit of this. Once we leave this section, any kind of great running stops. It goes back to the, like I say, it just completely commits to the corridor simulator. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say it's ended now, because although the greats will lower a third time, you don't have a reason to go on them for, once we reach the third set. Like, there's a lot of, once you reach the top, it stops mattering. And then once you leave this room, that's it. You have no more of the greats. It's just more fighting, more enemies, cutscenes, all the way to credits. And I know it probably makes me sound like I'm a lot more cynical and critical of it, but I genuinely love this DLC. I do really like it, but it's kind of, I guess, the nature of it being DLC. There are always going to be points where there are going to be problems. And for me, one of the biggest problems is just this second chapter. It's just not as interesting. It's just more Shinra stuff, you know? I kind of wanted them to break away from it a little bit more and have it feel more like Yuffie's adventure. But chapter 1 is Yuffie's adventure. Chapter 2 is just more main game shenanigans.
Oh, come on! How could we have gotten so lost?
Easy now. Focus. I know. Spirit of Chow Bean?
Sure. You ate it!
You sound surprised.
Man, I'm glad you're here.
Likewise.
It really helps, knowing I'm not alone in all this.
Yeah, same here.
Oh. Think I found our way across.
Right. Shall we?
Right, and now that whole cutscene, I'm pretty sure was only there to try and make out that Yuffie and Sonon have a bond of some kind. We carry on immediately without giving it another thought. You know, something that we would have found ourselves almost immediately. No, they had to do a little cutscene of like Sonon and Yuffie bonding for a minute, and then go, oh look, that's the way forward. Oh yeah, also, when you're in the Whacker box, just like in the main game, it presets what your quick commands are. So going back into the main adventure after doing a couple of attempts, you're going to see me do the wrong thing a couple of times, where I just adjusted to doing what it sets you to in the quick command. So now it's back on my quick command list. I've just had a minute to adjusting to the Whacker boxes list. So you're going to see me use Banishment trying to use Windstorm a couple of times before I'm like, no, wait, I need to hardwire my head again and do this right. Because it will be life or death when it matters later.
Check that out.
It does look more important than the others.
This has to be it. Oh, sweet baby, come to mama. Can't see squat. Light. I need more light.
Well, now, with the potential sign that the ultimate materia is right in front of us, we need to go find a way to turn on the lights. You can rest in Scarlet's chair, and I love the fact that Yuffie gets all cocky when she sits in it, like crosses her leg over and like probably like sits back into it. Because like you would, right? That looks like a really comfy chair. Way too big for its own good, but really comfy. But when you come over here, putting in this last piece will turn the light back on in the room we were just in, so you don't need to go on the grates on the side. You're going to see me run up to see if you can anyway, but there's no reason to, so the game just straight up says no. You know, like I said, it corridors you a lot, and so its way of corridoring you in this instance is to not even let you find out it's the wrong path for yourself, just stop you here, see? I try and I'm like, no, there's not even an arrow, you can't, it won't let you, the game just says do one. If you wish to backtrack, you can through the lift that activates every time you turn on one of those switches. So if you're feeling a little underprepared, you can go back and go through previous rooms and grind out a few things. Personally, I think you'll do just fine, but it's there anyway if there is that little bit of doubt for you, or you're really not sure about something. After turning the lights on, it's still not quite what was expected, but it did attract some new visitors. So we've got the red one from the main game and the purple one from that's unique to the DLC to fight. And just like in the main game, once you destroy the armor, they will self-destruct and release a shock trooper. It's a lot more flimsy and loose. The purple one's more magic-y focused, as you can see. And the new skill, the final skill that Sonon got, is kind of nice for group divide when there's several enemies and you want to focus on one. Because he will basically try and aggro one enemy onto him at your choice. You know that materia where when you're on low health, the enemy will try and use, your ally will use provoke? It's that, but as an actual skill, so you've got more control on it. Obviously, not everything can be provoked or incited in this instance. And bosses will straight up ignore it regardless. If they want to go for Yuffie, it doesn't matter what Sonon does, they're going for Yuffie. But it can be helpful for encounters where there are several enemies and you just want to thin the herd a little bit better. So instead of worrying about all the enemies attacking you at once, just have Sonon target one particular enemy you don't want to deal with yet and get them to pull him away. It will only last so long, and if you attack the enemy that he is incited, it will run out quicker. Because obviously you're attacking them, they're not idiots, they're gonna turn on you. But that's kind of the general gist. But as you might have noticed though, Sonon's 3 abilities, he gets one that's a unique attack animation, sure, cool. But he already starts with a unique attack animation anyway. Then the next 2 skills are focusing, where he will you tell him focus on that particular enemy and that enemy alone. Or incite, where he will say try and get that enemy to target you and you alone. So they're good support tools, But they're just that. They're nothing extra beyond it. Like I said, his abilities feel really weak.
So, have you found out what they want yet?
We think so. We can't say for certain, as their behavior is erratic. But they appear to be searching for materia.
Excuse me? You mean to say that these savages have gone to all this trouble for materia?
So far as we can tell, yes.
How very dull. Be that as it may, I suppose I should talk to them.
Ma'am,
Enjoying yourselves, I trust? Awed by a simple hologram? How precious. But I know just what you need to loosen up a little. After such a long journey, you must be so tense. Luckily, I have toys for that, all far more entertaining than this.
What do you want?
Oh dear, is that any way to talk to your host? Really though, as guests, it's more about what you want, and I think you'll find it just up ahead. Hurry now, don't keep me waiting.
So, boss, what are you thinking?
That we're walking into a trap, I guess. But it's nothing we can't handle, right?
Next time on Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, we're going to finally get it to Scarlet and try and find out what this ultimate materia really is. But until then, take care. Peace!